Hello, I invite you to this series of lessons in Intermediate English. I am Don Vincent, an English teacher at Kingsway Language Center, Negombo. Today, I am beginning a series of English lessons meant for students in higher grades and for those who have left school who wish to improve their English skills. This does not mean that students in the lower grades should not follow these lessons. They too will find these lessons helpful in their attempts to advance in English. My lessons will be entirely in English, and I will make them as easy as possible for you to follow for better understanding. I thought of starting this series of lessons at intermediate level because I felt there are already many videos in the YouTube for students at preliminary levels. By the way, I will not appear in this series of videos, but only the screens will appear. That is for the reason that I require you to concentrate entirely on the text appearing on the screen while listening to the teaching. Whether one writes or speaks English, correct use of language will make it attractive to others listening or reading. And there is the choice of words and the variety used that will make the language beautiful. I have designed this series of lessons to let you learn the language effectively. I hope you will find them very useful. You cannot think of speaking or writing English without knowing at least 50 irregular verbs. There are more than 200 irregular verbs, but for intermediate students, it will be sufficient if you learn, say, about 50 words. Don't even think of trying to learn English without knowing irregular verbs. That is for the reason that you will have to speak about things not only that happened today, but also what happened in the past and what will happen in the future. To talk about what happened in the past, you must remember that all past tense verbs don't end with the letters ed added. For example, the word walk can be made into past tense by the addition of ed. But the word eat cannot be made into a past tense by the addition of ed. There is a different word for that. Ate. Then it will be necessary for you to mention whether or when an action started, continued, or ended. You will be able to remember irregular verbs only by using them in sentences. Memorizing them like mathematical tables will not be helpful. I think I have spoken at length. That's because this is my first and introductory lesson. So let's make some sentences and questions, all with irregular verbs and forms of tenses, active and passive voices, all in one exercise. So let's proceed. Let's take the simple sentence, I begin work at 8 o'clock. The verb here is begin. Now, the past tense of this word is began and the past participle is begun. In some countries, they call the past participle special participle. That's because the participle is used not only in the past tense, but even in the present and future forms of tenses. So let's use these words in sentences and also questions so that we will have the opportunity of remembering these words in sentences that bring out their meanings. The sentence in the past tense is, I began work at 8 o'clock. In the future tense, I will begin work at 8 o'clock. Are these two the only irregular verbs you will use in your speech and writing? It may be necessary for you to say sometimes that you do not start work at 8. That is, in a negative sense. How do you say this sentence in a negative sense? By using the phrase do not. Look at the screen and try to find out the words you added to the present tense sentence to give this a negative meaning. The words are do not, or you can shorten this to don't. There are moments in your life when you have to ask questions. So, let's turn what is said in these sentences into questions. Do I begin work at 8 o'clock? Don't I begin work at 8 o'clock? In the first question, the word do is introduced, whereas in the positive sentence, I begin work, the verb do is not there. Only if it is there, you will find it easy to change that word into past tense, did. Why isn't it there? Normally, when you say a sentence in a positive way, the verb do need not be there. I will touch on this point in one of my future lessons. But when you say a sentence in a negative way, a do verb must be there with the word not added. Do not. I am sure that in the earlier stages of your English education, you are taught what are the occasions in which you use the present simple tense. Among them, the most common is what you do over a long period of time, like a habit. For example, brushing your teeth is a habit with you. You did it yesterday, you did it this morning, and you will do it tomorrow. So, to say about a habit with you, something that you do over a long time, you use simple present tense. So, in a way, what you call the simple present tense speaks about actions in the past and actions in the future also. That's one of the ironies of English language. Do you know what an irony is? As a student of intermediate English, you had better improve your vocabulary. An irony is a situation in which one finds himself facing the exact opposite of what was said in words. An example would be, it's an irony that he always worries of thinking about his health. Please remember that. Maybe I will explain this later in one of my lessons on vocabulary. Now, let's proceed to change these two sentences to passive voice sentences. In the sentence, I begin work at 8 o'clock, the essential words are, I begin work. At 8 o'clock only adds information. This is known as compliment. It's not a compliment which is what you do to praise someone. You pay him a compliment. What we are discussing is complement. C-O-M-P-L-E-M-E-N-T. Something necessary to complete something else. The difference is in the spelling. One has the letter I and the other has the letter E. How do we remember this? The word complete has E in it, not I. Therefore, something necessary to complete something else is complement. C-O-M-P-L-E-M-E-N-T. I mentioned this by the way. Let's get back to the original point. I begin work. In converting a sentence from active voice to passive voice, you know that the doers of the action, nouns, change places. Here they are I and work. So we must start the passive sentence with work. Work is begun by me at 8 o'clock. Work is an uncountable noun. Therefore, you can use a singular be verb. Work is. Begin becomes begun, which is the past participle of the word begin. Now, let's change the sentence, I don't begin work at 8 o'clock. The changed passive voice sentence will be, Work is not begun by me at 8 o'clock. You can shorten is not to isn't. There is every possibility that you will speak and write passages like what you see on the slide before long if you follow my lessons. Let's read that passage. Engineers build bridges. These engineers here are building this bridge. They have already built the foundation which they had been building from February this year. By January next year, they will have been building the bridge, and by June the next year, this bridge will have been built completely. There aren't many idioms with the use of the verb begin. There is only to begin with, which idiom is used to mention the first stage of a series of events. For example, you can use this idiom in a sentence like, he can't find a job. To begin with, he hasn't passed the ordinary level examination. This sentence means there are many reasons why he can't find a job. The most basic of them being his lack of education. I'll give you some synonyms of the word begin. They are start, commence, launch, initiate, and there are some more. Please note that although these words are synonyms, they cannot be used in place of the word begin always. For example, if the engine of a car wouldn't start, you cannot say the car wouldn't begin or commence. You have to say the car wouldn't start. The word launch is used especially to begin events in an organized manner. For instance, it is used when a company begins a promotional campaign for a new product. The word commence is very much a formal word. By formal, what I mean is something generally used in official matters and not in conversations between friends. But it is good to know that word which is a synonym of the word begin. The word initiate is also a formal word, but don't try to use one word in place of the other without having seen examples. For example, a football match can commence but not initiate. Initiate is the beginning of a very long activity. A football match lasts only an hour or so. You can remember this by using your own name. Initiate forms by the base word initial or initials. The set of initials you have lead to a longer name. Your initials, initiate, your full name. Then there are the phrasal verbs, kick off, get going, and set about. They all mean begin, but in certain instances, they cannot be used. For example, a football match can kick off, but not your school. You can't say your school kicks off next week. So, I'll come to the end of this lesson. There is a Chinese proverb which goes like this. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Have you heard this before? Anyway, I hope this lesson will prove to be the beginning of a long journey in your English education. That's why I chose the word begin to begin this lesson. See you in my next video. In the meantime, do the following exercise and be ready with your answers. We will discuss your answers when I do my lesson number 2. Thank you.